One of my favorite arguments for the pre-tribulation rapture is the presence of the 24 elders in heaven in Revelation chapter 4 and 5 prior to the opening of the first seal in Revelation chapter 6. Now, this argument depends in part on the testimony of Revelation 5:9, where we read in the King James, "For thou wast slain, and thou hast redeemed us to God by thy blood." But most modern versions, including the NASB and the ESV, leave the word us out of Revelation 5:9. They give readings along the line of purchased men, NASB, and ransomed people in the ESV. In these generic translations, when they're accompanied with leaving the word us out, put distance between the 24 elders and the blood redeemed. And this undermines the idea that the 24 elders in Revelation chapter 4 and 5 are the blood redeemed church in heaven prior to the tribulation. So are the modern versions correct for leaving the word us out? Or are the King James and the New King James Version correct for leaving the word us in? Stay tuned for an examination of this question that actually weighs the evidence available in the common apparatuses in the common Greek New Testaments. Hi there, I'm Lee Brainerd. Welcome to Soothkeep and another edition of Prophecy in the Crucible. My mission is truth. Truth that God will own as truth at the judgment seat of Christ. Truth in our doctrine, our practice, and our discernment. Well, let's start by reading the passage. I'm going to read it in my own translation of the Byzantine text. Revelation 5:8 and 9. And when he had taken the scroll, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, every one of them having harps and golden bowls full of fragrances, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and open the seals, for you were slain, and you have redeemed us to God by your blood out of every kindred, tongue, people, and nation." Now, the versions are divided on the presence of the word us. The King James and the New King James Version have the word us in the text. The NASB, the ESV, the Net Bible, the NIV, the CSB, and many other modern translations leave the word us out. So numerically speaking, the versions that leave the word us out vastly outnumber the versions that have the word us in Revelation 5:9. This raises a big question. Why do the modern versions leave out the word us? Is it legitimate for them to leave that out? Well, the answer to why they leave the word us out is found in modern critical text theory. The modern versions are translated from the so-called critical text. The most common editions of the critical text are the United Bible Society text of the Greek New Testament and the Nestle-Aland Greek New Testament. The critical text in theory, and I emphasize in theory, is based on the oldest and best manuscripts. The critical text, as it's evidenced in the 2 editions that we just mentioned, leaves the word us out. The assumption, therefore, is that the word us is left out because the oldest and best manuscripts leave the word us out. The assumption, therefore, is that the oldest and best evidence for the correct text leaves the word us out. And therefore, the versions that we have, the modern versions like the NASB, the ESV, and the Net Bible, and the CSB, and the NIV, they leave the word us out. But we've only looked at part of the story. There's a dirty secret about the critical text. You have to understand that the critical text does not follow the principle of the majority reading. It does not pursue the majority reading amongst the uncials or amongst the broader Egyptian text family. It doesn't follow the concept of the majority reading amongst the uncials in conjunction with all the testimony that's concurrent with it amongst the fathers and the early versions. It frequently assigns more weight to the five main uncials, Aleph, A, B, C, and D, than it does to the other uncials, and far more weight than it ascribes to the early versions and the citations from the early church fathers. The truth is, the text of the critical text is sometimes opposed by the majority reading of the uncials. This doesn't really make sense to me, but this is the way it is. The case gets worse if you include all the testimony from the uncial era, so you're including the testimony of the uncials and the concurrent patristic citations and the concurrent early versions. On top of that, it's not infrequent that the five main uncials, Aleph, A, B, C, and D, that amongst them, they're divided on any given reading that there's a textual issue over. The truth is, sometimes the rejected majority reading from the uncial texts actually agrees with the Byzantine text. And this is especially true if we regard the whole uncial era testimony and not merely the uncials themselves. In other words, we regard the uncials and the church fathers that were in that same era and the early versions that were in the same era. But the picture looks a whole lot different if we don't merely follow the modern critical text theory and we actually do some serious textual criticism. Here's the first big shocker. Leaving the word us out of Revelation 5:9 is only defended, folks, by two witnesses. Yes, you heard me correct, just two witnesses. There's one uncial, Codex A, which is Codex Alexandrinus, and there's one early version, which is the Ethiopic version. Folks, this is a very weak case for leaving the word us out of Revelation 5:9. Here's the second big shocker. There is a very weighty case for including the word us. Two weighty uncials include the word us. Aleph, which is known as Sinaiticus, and the Chester Beatty Papyri. So we've got two uncials that have it and one uncial that leaves it out. On top of that, all of the patristic citations that are mentioned in the apparatus in the main critical texts, they all feature the word us. On top of that, the early versions that are cited in the critical text apparatus, 7 from the Atala or the Old Latin, the Vulgate, 2 different Coptic versions, 2 different Syriac versions, and the Armenian version, they all have the word us. On top of that, you have a vast array of testimony from the Byzantine texts, typically minuscules, that feature the word us. Now, this is a tremendous pile of evidence in favor of having us. If we simply followed the majority reading of the uncial texts, we would be forced to go with the word us, including the word us. If we equally weighted the testimony of the uncials and the contemporary patristic citations and the contemporary early versions, it's a slam dunk for including the word us. Folks, this is a great example where the text of the critical text doesn't give us the best attested reading from the uncials, and the unsealed era. It gives us a reading that disagrees with the Byzantine text. The dirty truth is the critical text has a predilection for non-Byzantine readings. And the editors oftentimes take non-Byzantine readings, even when the majority of the unseals and the majority of the unsealed era testimony sides with the Byzantine reading. This kind of prejudice, folks, does not belong in textual criticism. The truth is, if we allow the fundamental rules of textual criticism to do their job, to prevail, it is safe to conclude that the original reading in Revelation 5:9 was purchased us to God by his blood. There's one relatively early scribal era that left out the word us, and this gave us purchased to God by his blood. And notice there's no direct object there. There's a hole in the text. This is why the modern translators, when they translate Revelation 5:9, include a direct object, and they supply men or people or something of that nature. The grammar demands a direct object that is not there in the Greek text, and so they add a direct object like men or people. There was another rare scribal error that left out to God, and so then that just leaves us with purchased us by his blood. But the vast majority of the witnesses from both the uncial era and from the minuscule era, in other words, the vast majority of the textual evidence from the Egyptian family as well as from the Byzantine family, give us purchased us to God by his blood. This isn't even a fight between the Byzantine textual tradition and the Egyptian textual tradition or the eclectic textual tradition. This is simply, doesn't matter which theory you follow, this is the best reading. So in conclusion, folks, we can trust the certainty of the reading that includes the word us. There is zero doubt in my mind that purchased us to God by his blood is the correct reading. And there is zero doubt in my mind that candid textual criticism that doesn't harbor a strong prejudice against the Byzantine textual tradition, they will be forced to agree. Now, establishing this reading upholds the pre-trib understanding that the 24 elders represent the blood-bought church. If the 24 elders are blood-bought, they can't be angels. They must be human beings. And if the 24 are human beings, then the thrones they sit on and the crowns that they are wearing are rewards that they receive at the resurrection. So if they already have their thrones and they already have their crowns, then they have already been resurrected and rewarded. And if they are already resurrected and rewarded in Revelation chapter 4 and 5, then they are raptured prior to the opening of the first seal in Revelation chapter 6. Folks, this is a pre-tribulation rapture. This is the rapture prior to the rise of the Antichrist. Well, I trust this lesson has encouraged you. I trust it has encouraged you in the correct understanding of the 24 elders. I trust that it has encouraged you in the strength of the argument for the pre-tribulation rapture. And I trust it has encouraged you in the value of textual criticism that actually weighs the evidence and doesn't merely run with a popular textual criticism narrative. Eyes wide open, brain engaged, heart on fire. We'll see you next time.